Alright, so welcome to the first of our tri-annual GPU recommendation videos. This one's actually kind of late because last year I want to say we released ours in early January, and it is now February 24th on the day of recording this, so we are incredibly late, but let's just dump right into this with the 1080p cards. So notice how we're not talking about 720p because really most low-end cards that you're going to be able to find today are going to be able to run 720p just fine. Even like the super cheapo RX 5500, that thing can crush 720p and 1080p, so we're just going to completely leave it off the table. Alright, so moving into 1080p, which is surprisingly actually still the most popular resolution, and the first recommendation that I'm going to go ahead and give is the RX 580 and 590. Now these cards are starting to show their age a little bit. They're based on the old Polaris architecture, but they are incredibly cheap, coming in at $170, and if you're trying to build some sort of current gen killing PC, the RX 580 is definitely the way to go. Now moving into the green team, we've got the GTX 1650 and 1650 Super. Now these I wouldn't really recommend over what I'm going to be discussing next, just because it's NVIDIA, and for whatever reason NVIDIA lately just has not been having that great of a price to performance ratio. Like, don't get me wrong, the RTX 2060 Super, 2070 Super, 2080 Super, they're excellent cards, but they're lower end cards. To me personally, I would tend to avoid, and I would more go towards AMD. So even so, the 1650 Super can be found for, once again, $170, and it's not a bad 1080p card. Now moving back onto the red team, and this might surprise you guys a little bit, we have the RX 5500 and the 5500 XT, which come in at about $200 to $220. Now this card is probably the one I'd recommend the most if you're going for a new build in 2020, just because it's super power efficient, 7 nanometers, you've got GDDR6, it's got a ton of forward-looking features, even though it does lack the DXRT of the NVIDIA cards, it still has great rasterization performance, and similarly to these next cards, the RX 5600 and 5600 XT, which come in at about $300, which is significantly more expensive, you would be able to crush 1080p and do some light 1440p gaming. So moving into 1440p, the first recommendation that I've got is the RTX 2060 Super. And keep note that it's the Super, not the regular card, because the regular 2060, while it's alright, honestly is not that great of a value when compared to the Super, even though the Super is a little bit more expensive. Coming in at about $300 to $350, which is super cheap, so I don't know where I'm getting these numbers from because I thought the 2060 was way more expensive. You're getting incredible rasterization performance at 1440p, and you're getting a sneak peek into the future with the glorious ray tracing. Alright, so moving back onto the red team, we have the RX 5700 and 5700 XT. Pretty self-explanatory. If you've seen any review, they're excellent cards for 1440p, even some 4K gaming, and for the $360 to $400 that you can find them for, they're an excellent card, and I cannot recommend them enough. Now moving back over to the green team, we've actually got the RTX 2070 and the RTX 2070 Super. And if I was given the choice, I'd go with the Super over just the regular 2070, just because it has more CUDA cores, it's just a overall better card even though it is more expensive, and it does completely crush the 1080 Ti in just raw rasterization performance. But the ultimate downside is that this graphics card costs about as much as a console, coming in at $500, which would be a huge turnoff to a lot of people who are just looking to play some 1080p games, but for people like me who are tech enthusiasts, $500 for a 2070 Super? I'll take it. Alright, so moving from 1440p and into 2160p, I know this is kind of irrelevant because not very many people are running 4K monitors. I am one of them, but even so, I don't play my games at 4K. But if I did have to choose a graphics card to go with a 2160p monitor, I would go with, without a doubt, the RTX 2080 series, which includes the regular 2080, the 2080 Super, and the 2080 Ti. Now, of course, these graphics cards are incredibly expensive, not only because they're from NVIDIA, but because the actual die size on these things is freaking massive. Like, every time that I look at one of these cards' PCBs, I just get a huge nerd boner because, oh my god, these cards are so freaking beautifully designed, and they're so complex, but they're so expensive, but they can do so much. But if you are looking for a 4K capable card, the 2080 series definitely is probably the way to go. Probably could get away with a 2070 Super, but just to be on the safe side, I'd recommend the 2080. Now, sticking with 4K and moving over into the red team, I'm going to go ahead and have to throw in the Radeon 7, which might surprise a couple of you guys because in terms of rasterization performance, the 2080 curb stomps it, hands down. But what the Radeon 7 has over the NVIDIA competitors is a massive 16 gig frame buffer, which for people like me who intensively video edit and intensively game, 16 gigs of VRAM can definitely be a lifesaver, especially when importing and exporting 4K files. But if you're going strictly for gaming, the 2080 series is fine. I would only recommend the Radeon 7 if you're gaming and you're also a content creator. Now, more towards the tail end of this video, I also wanted to throw in a budget section, just because a lot of these cards I wouldn't really recommend anymore, just because they're starting to age and the availability of them is starting to become a little hard to find. But if I did have to pick a few budget cards that I would recommend, I would definitely recommend any of the 10 series cards hands down. Maybe not the 1050 Ti, 1030 levels, but 1060 up, go for it. They are fantastic 1080p, 1440p cards. And even for 1080p gaming, the RX 480, the RX 470, a lot of the older AMD cards, while they're super power hungry and you don't really hear much about them anymore, are still fantastic cards for gaming at 1080p and can absolutely monster console settings. Now the last card I'm going to go ahead and throw in is the GTX 970. Now I've recommended this card in the past, but in a couple of my videos, I want to say the last 2 or 3 I've brought it up, but honestly now I wouldn't really recommend buying a used 970 over all these other new options such as the RX 580 and 590, the RX 5500, the RX 5500 XT. All these newer, cheaper cards are offering incredible performance that makes these older cards kind of obsolete. While yes, the 970 is still a great 1080p gaming card, if I had to choose between a 970 and some new RX 5500, I'd choose the 5500 in a heartbeat, just because, once again, it's more modern, more power efficient, and it will ultimately last me longer with updates and driver revisions. So that's really all I have to say on the matter. Sorry if I disappointed a few of you guys by not including more of the quote-unquote budget-focused cards. I feel like I've done that a lot on this channel, and I kind of wanted to avoid that in this video, just to kind of bring in a more general discussion. But even so, like I said, these budget cards, they're not bad cards, but looking towards the future, it's something that I would personally stay away from. But either way, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and click the bell icon so you'll be notified about all our future uploads. And thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.